have any questions? No questions, no answers.
Ajahn,
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question to what you mentioned yesterday after the meal.
Mm-hmm.
If sometimes you find that you were talking about like having grudges and anger, and if you find that at some point that relationship is just, well, you're not strong enough to constantly trigger that, you feel like you need that space. But sometimes you also find yourself that there's contempt, like your intentions are not entirely pure. You also feel like you're better than that person, that's why you're stepping away from them. Like there's the stepping away because you need the space. There's also part of you know that you're stepping away because you feel like you're not worth my time and I'm better than you.
If you waited till your intentions were pure, nothing would ever get done. So, I mean, just try to look at it as objectively as possible. Okay, this relationship is not working. It's time that I step back. Now, whether I'm better than the other person or the other person is better than me, that's not the issue. And if those thoughts do come up in your mind, just remind yourself, okay, that's irrelevant. But if you say, I'm not going to act until my intentions are pure, you're going to have to become an arahant. And that'll never happen. So, I mean, one of the things about Buddhism, different from Christianity, is that we're not part of, one big loving family, and then we have to learn how to make it, be on good terms with everybody. The Buddha was very clear about the fact that there's some people that you just can't get along with. I mean, even in the Sangha, if there's been a split in the Sangha, and the time comes to try to have a reconciliation, you have to get into the original motivation, why the split happened. And if the one side was operating basically on really very, very unskillful motives, they were lying and they knew they were lying, he says you can't have a reconciliation. If you try to paper it over, it's not a real, it's like the scar is still there, but just a little bit of skin over the top of it, but the scar is still there. So in cases like that, you have to say, okay, we can't reconcile. And you have to go your separate ways. Because reconciliation and forgiveness are two different things. Forgiveness is when you say, basically, I'm not going to pose any danger to that person, whatever that person has done to me, I'm not going to try to get back at the person. That's something you can do unilaterally. A reconciliation, both sides have to sit down together and talk about what happened. And the side that was basically in the wrong has to admit, okay, what I did was wrong, so that you can establish the fact that you still have values that are in common, and you agree as to what counts as an unfair or an illegitimate motivation to act on. Then you realize, okay, that can be the basis for patching up the friendship. If you can't do that, you just gotta leave it. Pasatai gadai na. Yes.
Ajahn, can you please describe about pain when you're meditating and there's pain, how to actually overcome that pain, please?
Okay, your first motivation should be, I don't want the pain to invade my mind and remain. It can't be that I want to make the pain go away. Now, you will test it first to see, are there ways that I can help make the pain go away? Because you don't want to inflict yourself unnecessarily with pain. And so you start out with working with the breath energy in the body. Say you've got a pain in the left knee. You find that, okay, at different parts of the body where there's no pain and you can get the breath energy comfortable, you focus there first. And get that energy really good, comfortable. And then step number 2, you think of that good energy going down the body out through the pain. And see if that helps to dissolve it. And right there you're establishing the fact that you're not afraid of the pain, that you can be more proactive toward it. And to whatever extent that works or doesn't work, the next step is to actually go in and look at the sensation of the pain. What exactly does it feel like? You may have mental images about it, you may have perceptions about it, but how accurate are they, and to what extent are they getting in the way of you're actually perceiving the actual pain? Some questions you can ask are, is the pain the same thing as the body? or it's the same thing as the knee. And at first it actually feels like the pain and the knee sensations are the same thing. But if you look at it carefully, the knee sensations are made out of the qualities of earth, water, wind, and fire: solidity, liquidity, warmth, coolness. But the pain is something else. And so if you can make that distinction between, okay, these are body sensations, those are pain sensations, they're two separate things, then you begin to see that the pain sensations move around a lot. And then you can chase them and say, where's the sharpest point of the pain? And you chase it around, you find that it keeps moving. And at the pain, you ask yourself, in my mental image, does the pain have a shape? Does it have a color? Does it have an intention toward me? And as an adult, you'd say, of course not. But many times our attitudes toward pain were things that we picked up when we were children, before we even knew language. And so we have some subconscious attitudes that we carried over since way back that haven't been questioned because it seems too stupid to question them. But they're there. So you have to ask questions to kind of dig them out. Another perception I found useful is that when you notice that it is moments of pain coming and going, when they arise, think of them as going away rather than coming at you. It's the difference between sitting in a car, facing the direction that the car is going, and whatever's coming down the road looks like it's coming straight at you. Whereas if you sit in the back like an old station wagon that had the seats that faced in the back at the rear end of the station wagon, as soon as something comes into range of vision, it's already going away. If you can hold that perception in mind, that makes it a lot easier to deal with the pain. Because what you're trying to do is figure out to what extent is the suffering in my mind caused by how I'm talking to myself, to what extent is it caused by the perceptions I hold in mind, the images I hold in mind, and can I change those? And that way you find that you're working with the breath energy, sometimes you can actually make a pain go away. And other times, if you can't, then you can say, well, it's more of a mental issue than the physical issue, and then you start focusing on the mental side. And when you get to the point where you see that your awareness is one thing and the pain is something else, then you can be with the pain and it's not going to overcome the mind. Yes.
Ajahn, what would be the necessary karmic conditions for one to ordain in a next life if they haven't already ordained in this life?
Feed the monks. Tun King told me, he said, make sure that you tell the people to feed the monks. I always feel embarrassed when I say that. But if you don't have that kind of karma in the past, then you go ordain as a monk, you don't have much to eat. So. And secondly, try to live live by the 8 precepts as much as you can in this lifetime. And meditate as much as you can. And basically give yourself to the practice as much as you can, and that will tend to provide the karma. It makes it more likely that you will ordain.
If someone wants to ordain, but they feel like still drawn to the world, is there any way to make that easier, that process?
Well, just tell yourself, I've got the opportunity now. If I don't take advantage of it now, someday down the line I'm going to regret it. That I didn't take the opportunity. Because when I ordained, it was not like I said, okay, I'm done with the world. And there's still a lot of the world that was still attractive. But I had met Ven.Ajahn Fuang at that point, and I realized, okay, here's my opportunity. And Ajahn, who doesn't have many students, I'd have a lot of time with him. If I don't take advantage of this now, I'm going to regret it later on. So I told myself, okay, I'll give it 5 years. And if it doesn't work out in 5 years, then I'll disrobe. I went back to Thailand, and he said he would take me on only on the condition that I made a vow, that if I don't succeed in my meditation, I'd be willing to die in Thailand. And I figured, well, I've come this far, I might as well take the vow. And having made a vow like that makes it easier to say, no, I don't want to go back. So part of it is just realizing that you've got this opportunity, take it while you can. And don't expect, well, I'll wait until I'm totally disillusioned with the world and then I'll ordain. It's not going to happen. You learn that a lot of the practice is learning how to talk to yourself in the right way. It's called verbal fabrication. The things you focus on and the things you say to yourself about what you focused on can make a huge difference in your attitudes. As the Buddha said, a sign of your wisdom comes from the way you approach the actions that are presented to you. He says some are no-brainers. Something you like to do and will give good results, it's easy to do. Something you don't like to do and it gives bad results, you're not going to do it. The difficult ones are the things you like to do but you know are going to give bad results. Or the things that you don't like to do but will give good results. In those cases, it's how you talk to yourself is going to make the difference. Reminding yourself, okay, I want the good results, I want to avoid the bad results. I can't let my likes and dislikes get in the way. And it's up to you to figure out how to psych yourself out. I mean, you know your psychology better than anybody else. So try to take advantage of that.
Ajahn, what are the benefits or the fruits if you give like a forest monastery as a donation to the Sangha?
The Buddha said that giving a place where the monks could live is like giving them everything. He talks about the benefits of giving food, the benefits of giving clothing, but then when you give a place where the monks can actually sit and practice, or stay and practice, you're giving them the whole environment. So those are the benefits.
And what are the benefits of building a chedya?
You'll get respected, but there's no guarantee of what you'll be respected for, you know? There's a section of the canon called the Apadanas, which it's one of the few parts of the canon that hasn't been translated in English. And it's stories that came late in the canon, and you got the impression as you're reading the stories, they were written by monks who wanted to talk the lay people into giving donations. Because there's so much about how this famous Arahant or that famous Arahant in the past, many, many aeons ago, gave a gift to the Sangha and dedicated it to eventually gaining awakening. And then in this lifetime they did become Arahants. And one of the themes is people who build jetties get a lot of respect. So, but do you want a lot of respect or do you want to practice? It's hard to practice in a jetty. Hand over here.
And you mentioned that the mind can, at some point, have the awareness of the mind, awareness being separate to that which the mind is experiencing. If one has experienced that before, for, let's say, a couple of weeks, but hasn't experienced that separation of mind and contents of mind for many years, what would be the advice that one could try and use to get that?
Get back there again?
Yeah.
Okay, basically you have to ask yourself, what things have I gotten involved with in the meantime that have pulled the quality of my concentration down? Because sometimes when the concentration goes well, you start getting complacent. You notice, okay, if I skip a day or two, it doesn't matter, it doesn't make any difference. And you skip longer and longer periods of time, and it starts pulling you down. So you have to ask yourself, what entanglements have I gotten involved with since then that are getting in the way of my getting back to that state? And see if you can cut through those entanglements.
Then isn't that a bit of craving for?
It's a good craving.
No?
Yeah, there's good cravings, you know.
Yeah. Putting your mind into this, I want that back.
Okay, then the difference is, if you just sit there and say, I want it, I want it, I want it, that's bad. But you say, okay, how do I go about getting it back? What actually works? I mean, that's how the Buddha gained awakening. We talked about this point last night. That, in the definition of suffering, he talks about one of the forms of suffering is not getting what you want. And most people read that and they say, well, I guess I just shouldn't want anything and then I won't suffer. But the Buddha was more specific than just anything in general. He's talking about if you're subject at birth, you don't want to be born. If you're subject to aging, you don't want to age. If you're subject to illness, you don't want to grow ill. You're subject to death, you don't want to die. And you just think that I just want these things. That's the suffering. But then these are the things that actually motivated the Buddha to go out into the forest to begin with. And that was the problem he wanted to solve. How do I not have to get born again, get old again, get ill again, and die? And so the question is, what is the skillful way about going about that? So it was that desire drove him. Chanda, the desire, and Dhamma, craving. Those are the things that drove him, but he realized, okay, I can't just use the power of wanting to get there. I have to train those desires so they get me on the right path. Figuring out how does cause and effect work in such a way that I can get past these things. That's the path. Like I talked about this morning, what they call the 4 bases for success. The first one is desire. You have to want to do something well. Then the second one is based on what you want. You work on it, and then you give full attention to what you're doing, and then you reflect on the results. And if they're not good enough, you have to ask yourself, how can I improve? It's that desire is what motivates you all the way through. So there will be some stress on the path, but that's part of. I mean, how many people in here have found that the path is just, like sliding down ice? It takes effort.
The thing is that if you start slacking and if you slack for too long, when you want to get back on the path again, it's a bit of a...
Yeah, well, you just tell yourself, I can't think all the time about the results. I want to have to ask myself, what are the steps? What are the causes going to be? And you have to have enough ability to abandon your pride to say, I'm going to go back to the kindergarten steps. There's a famous story about a tennis star whose game was in a slump. And he tried different rackets, he changed his managers, he tried all kinds of things. Nothing worked until he finally realized he'd forgotten number 1 rule in tennis: keep your eye on the ball. So you have to go back to the kindergarten steps.
The thing is, it's quite a bit of a lot of suffering when you want to get back, and you just can't get back into where you were before.
Well, just tell yourself, if I don't get back, it's going to be more suffering. Yeah.
Jack, can you explain a bit about the breath energy?
Okay, the breath energy is part of what's called the wind element in the body. And it can flow down the nerves, flow down the blood vessels, flow through your muscles, come in and out the pores of your skin. And it's basically, if you close your eyes, say you hold your arm out, and you close your eyes, you know your arm is there, right? And what's telling you that your arm is there? Those sensations are, earth, water, wind, fire. And the breath is the most basic of all of them. And so, just tell yourself, okay, the breath energy is already there. What I'm feeling in my body is breath. Now I've been treating it maybe as something else, but if I hold the perception, this is breath, and if there are parts of the body that are tight or tense, okay, that's breath energy that's been blocked. What would you do with a blocked breath? You relax it. And that's what you're getting in touch with how you actually feel. You're not creating something that's not there already. But you're getting in touch with something that's already there, but you've labeled it something else.
So can I say that when the breath energy is there, your intention is there?
Okay, the breath energy is there whether you pay attention to it or not. And we're just saying, try to pay attention to it as carefully as you can, with the right perception in mind. Because if there's a blockage and you think, well, that must be a bone, you'll treat it one way. But if you tell yourself, no, that's not a bone, that's actually blocked energy. What do I do to unblock it? That creates possibilities you wouldn't have thought of otherwise. You got a question here?
Ajahn, I've been reading your Meditation 6 book, and there's some messages from 2007, and your message has been very consistent. I was wondering, what is one message that you say a lot, but generally people overlook?
Overlook is, Ooh, an awful lot of things people overlook. But one of them is that you're not just on the receiving end of your experience, you're actually shaping it more than you think. And the Buddha is telling you to take advantage of that fact. That's probably the number one message. Yeah.
Going back to the breath energy, is that similar to qi?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it the same thing? Or
I think it's basically the same thing. It's just that in Qigong they work at it with one point in mind, which is to get yourself healthy. When we're working with breath energy, with breath meditation, it's more to give the mind a comfortable place to settle down. You're not trying to get the perfect breath or become a master breather, but you're trying to get it comfortable enough so you feel at ease in the present moment, and that the mind can feel settled here, feels at home here in the body, right here, right now. And then you start looking into the mind itself.
Ajahn, talking about the qi energy, when practicing, I do qi gong. So when doing the movement, it's quite focused on the movement, and it's quite meditative. Is that considered meditation?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're focusing on your sense of the body as you feel it inside, which is called form in the Buddhist vocabulary, which means that you're pulling your mind away from its interest in sensual pleasures. And so that would be a form of right meditation. Then the question is, what do you do with it?
You just follow it and just bliss with it, that's it.
Okay. Well, ideally then you sit down and you say, I don't even have to move around, I can still get the breath energy to flow while I'm sitting still. And that way then the mind can get deeper into concentration. Because one of the advantages of working with the breath energy is that the need to breathe in and out gets less and less and less. As you feel that it's not so much that you're pulling breath in from outside, but you've got these breath energy centers in the body, they're radiating energy. And so I've got breath in my body, I don't have to pull it in. And the breath gets quieter and quieter, and the more quiet you get the breath, the more clearly you can see what's going on in the mind. Where you have the sense of fullness in the breath energy in the body.
Ajahn, does those Reiki practicing will interfere with the meditation, the normal meditation?
Does what?
Reiki, the energy healing?
No. I mean, there are some meditation methods that are trying to push you over the edge. And they don't let you do Reiki, and they don't let you do Qigong, and they don't let you do Tai Chi. And basically they're trying to sort of break the mind. Whereas with this method, you're not trying to do that. You're trying to give the mind a good place to settle down. So the better the breath energy can flow in the body, the better off it is for your meditation.
And then when you're talking about pushing you to the edge, I've noticed that the last 6 months, I'm quite irritable with a lot of noises. And I don't know what I should actually do. Go into isolation completely, or
Well, try to get away from the noise for the time being, and then just say, if I had a sense of satisfaction inside, the noise is not going to bother me. 1. So work on developing a sense of satisfaction inside. 2, I'll tell you a story. I had to stay in Bangkok for a while, and they had this little store behind the monastery, and they opened up at 4 in the morning to serve rice porridge to the tuk-tuk drivers. In order to let the tuk-tuk drivers know that they were opening, they blasted loud music. Of course, 4 a.m. is the time you want to meditate, right? And I said, okay, how am I going to survive this? And I found the best way to do that was say, okay, I'm not going to put up any resistance to the noise. Just think of the noise flowing right through me. And I came up with this perception of my body and my awareness were like a screen on a window. You know, the wind comes through the screen and the screen doesn't have to move. And the screen's not disturbed by the wind. And because it doesn't put up any resistance. So it's okay, I'll just let the sound go right through me. And I was able to sit with the sound and have no problems. So ask yourself where you're putting up resistance to the sound.
It's not the noises from the natural environment. I'm okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the noises from
people. Okay.
And
Okay, well,
very irritable.
blaring music at 4 a.m. in the morning is not a natural environment. So part of the problem is that you know that it's people are doing this and they don't have to. With nature, you say, well, the nature is just doing its thing. It's not doing anything to disturb me. And so you just tell yourself, well, human beings are kind of like nature. They just do their thing. And if I don't like the human realm, I have to go get born someplace else. So learn how to live here. As long as you're a human being, learn how to live with humans. Because a lot of it, you know that famous line from Ajahn Chah, it's not the case that the noise that you're disturbing you, you're disturbing the noise. Yeah. So. But I found also just don't resist the noise. Just let it flow right through you. It's a physical feeling you have, okay, that can go through. And it's a lot easier to take.
Hi, Ajahn. I have a question. I once misunderstood a good person as a bad person, and I now feel really guilty. So what should I do to forgive myself?
Okay, just tell yourself that it's normal to have wrong perceptions, and just say, I have to be more careful. What deceived me the last time around? I don't want to be deceived the same way the next time. And then lots of goodwill for yourself, goodwill for the other person. And I noticed when COVID hit, all of a sudden we were confined to the monastery. I started thinking back more and more about my past actions in this lifetime. And I realized I made a lot of mistakes. But I also thought, I think I'm not the only one who's made a lot of mistakes. And that takes some of the sting out of that realization. So think in those terms, and then just say, okay, what misled me about my reading of that person? Why was how did I get a mistaken opinion? And then be more careful the next time. Yes?
When we give metta, we usually have an object, a person or an animal or some object. But I read somewhere that the teacher said that when you give metta to the feeling. And that's something I have never done. Is that the right way?
Well, giving metta to a feeling, are we talking about physical feelings or emotional feelings?
I think sometimes when something upsets you or something, there's a feeling in the heart area. And I thought after I heard that teaching, I gave the metta to that feeling. And somehow it subsided. And I thought, oh, that must be another way of doing it. And I'm just checking.
If it works for you, it's fine.
Sorry.
If it works for you, it's fine.
นมัสการหลวงพ่อเจ้าค่ะดิฉันโยมแอนมันเหมือนกับไม่สบายเจ้าค่ะเป็นมาประมาณจากวันที่22เป็นว่าประมาณ 3-4 อาทิตย์กินไม่ได้นอนไม่หลับออกร้อนออกลมทุรนทุรายจะอยู่ไหนนี่เหมือนกับอยู่ในโลกใบนี้มันทรมานเหลือเกินไปหาหมอเขาก็ตรวจเลือดตรวจอะไรก็ไม่เป็นอะไรแต่ก็ไม่อยากกินข้าว นอนก็ไม่ได้กังวลสับสนวุ่นวายร้อนรนไหม้ทั้งตัวเลยเจ้าค่ะจะมีวิธีไหนช่วยได้เบาบางลงบ้างเจ้าค่ะ
ก็อย่างที่บอกเมื่อกี้ว่าแผ่เมตตาตนและเมตตาผู้อื่นแต่คิดว่านี่เป็นโรคกรรมแล้วคนจะมีกรรมอะไรกับใครสักคนหนึ่งคนไหนที่เป็นเจ้ากรรมนายเวรของเราแล้วก็เราจะสร้างความดีแล้วก็อุทิศให้เขาหลังจากนั้นก็แผ่เมตตาทั่วไปหมดเลยให้ใจของเราอยู่กับอารมณ์ที่ดีถึงแม้ว่าร่างกายทุรนทุรายแต่ใจของเราอย่าให้มันทุรนทุรายไปตาม
แล้วเกิดกินไม่ได้นอนไม่หลับร่างกายก็อ่อนแอ
ก็นอนภาวนาคืออย่างที่ว่าแผ่เมตตา
แผ่เมตตานี่ก็ไม่ยังไงจะมา
ก็หมายถึงว่าขอให้สัตว์ทั้งหลายทั่วโลกท่านมีความสุขคนไหนที่เคยทำล่วงเกินท่านจะแผ่เมตตาให้เขาเลยขอให้เขามีความสุขแล้วก็ให้เขายินดีอนุโมทนาด้วยเพื่อสร้างความดี
So how to practice the meditation in our daily busy life and in our daily busy life and if we learn about meditation more and more and about the Buddhism, it's like I become a bit not that enthusiastic about life and about all the things.
Okay, well, try to become enthusiastic about the meditation. Be enthusiastic about the meditation.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then you're still not depressed, right? What? You're not depressed, right? No. Okay. But look at the world. I mean, is it really worth being enthusiastic about? We've got these crazy idiots taking over the United States.
No, I mean that when you become, it's like you will see that life is full of ups and downs. Everything is like very uncertain. Life is unpredictable. A lot of uncertainty. It's not predictable at all. And you become. Normally we need to have like ambition in life. This is the goal that we need to achieve. This. But the more and more you learn about the Buddhism, it's like.
Well, the Buddha said you should have some passion for the path, which means at my job, my work, my family life, these are my opportunities to develop good qualities in my mind, what they call the perfections. Okay, this is an opportunity to develop endurance, to develop determination, to develop truthfulness, all the good Capricorn virtues, and be enthusiastic about that. Because the affairs of the world, I mean, when you die, you have to let them go anyhow, but you will have the quality of your mind will go with you. So here you say, okay, I can focus here, and this is really meaningful. This will have meaning that goes beyond just this lifetime and goes on into future lifetimes. The good qualities I build in my mind. And as for daily practice, when you get so that you're sensitive to the breath energies in your body, as you go through the day, you kind of say, maybe I can't keep track of whether my breath is coming in and going out, but I can keep track of the general quality of breath energy in my body, and try to keep it relaxed, keep it easy flowing. And then notice when you drop it, or notice when you tense up. So okay, if I tense up, relax. Tense up, relax. And that gives you sort of a grounding as you go through the day. And from that ground, then you can do your business, do whatever responsibilities you have. But you're coming from a sense of sort of being well grounded and coming from a position of strength. And also because you've got a sense of well-being inside, you're not so eager to feed off of other people's words or actions. Because if you don't have that well-being inside, you're looking for well-being outside. I want people to say nice things to me and do nice things to me. And sometimes they will, and sometimes they won't. It's like you're going around saying, please, 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 please. Give me something nice. They spit in your hand. But if you don't hold your hands like this, they can't spit in your hands.
Bhante, I was reading Ajahn Lee and him mentioning that if you chew food and you don't swallow, you don't have to defecate.
Right.
Could you elaborate a bit more?
He said you have to spit your food out. In other words, you get the mind in a position where it doesn't need to feed. Because all the time we're going around feeding emotionally on this person or that situation. And if you're like, I don't need to feed on those things, then you don't have anything you have to digest. You know? And there may be poison throughout the world because you're not trying to feed on anything, it's not going to poison you. It's because we're constantly looking for food outside that we get poisoned by the world. John Lee has a lot of good lines.
If I may, on the question of pain, I mean, a lot of the Kruba Ajahns test their samadhi and meditation through pain sometimes, the way I understand. What is the limit of getting up in, say, 10 minutes, which is too short, like having to deal with the pain? Or some teachers that I've sat with, when you can sit 1 hour, they'll ask you to sit an hour and a half or two. When you can do 2, they'll say sit for 3 and 4 plus. So what's the physical limit, if there is any? What's the extreme?
I say if you can sit for 8 hours without pain, you're doing well. But it's not so much the amount of time that you're doing, it's the quality of your concentration and the quality of your discernment. That's what makes a difference. Again, John Lee says you can have one instant of insight, and that's better than hours and hours and hours of just sitting there. But the insight has to be really good. He says it's the difference between having, paper money and a bushel of newsprint. The paper money is a little piece of paper, but it's got value, whereas the newsprint doesn't have much value. So go for quality. Mm-hmm.
Ajahn, I've been going to temples for many years, and at the moment my practice is very centered on metta and the Brahma Viharas. And I've noticed that in temple environments there's a lot of harshness. There's a lot of fear of making mistakes, which is precisely the thing that I'm trying to work on. So I'm just wondering how to reconcile that.
Okay, tell yourself, going to a temple is like going to the hospital. And you'll encounter all kinds of people in the hospital. And you say, okay, they should be working on their issues, I'm working on my issues. And don't pick up their diseases. On the one hand, there is an etiquette that you want to learn and you want to follow it. But on the other hand, it shouldn't be such a burden that it's making you depressed or really down on yourself. So when you find that you are getting down on yourself, you say, look, I've lost my perspective on this. So just tell yourself, okay, I'm in a hospital. I'm in the Buddha's hospital.
It relates to karma and insights that might appear deep within the mind when the mind is calm. I'm just walking calmly through my house or sitting down just between activities, but my mind is calm. When I was younger, occasionally those deep insights into impermanence, the body disintegrating or building disintegrating might occur. Is the karmic cause in past lives have been doing a lot of reflection on those types of things, and when the mind is calm enough?
Yeah, you've got a background. You have a background. You've got a history. We all have history. We come to meditation, and the methods of meditation we used in the past will tend to come up as you meditate. In some cases they're helpful, in other cases they're actually getting in the way. When an insight like that comes, you ask yourself, okay, what can I do with this insight now? And then you just let it go. Ajahn Fung was very strict about this. He says, don't try to keep a notebook of your meditations, and don't try to memorize your insights. The whole point of insight is that it comes when you need it. And if an insight comes, but it's not what you need right now, put it away. Oops. Ooh. Karma. Present karma. Ooh, that's going to be a stain for a long time. I'm not going to remember. This is a John Jeff's mark in this monastery.
John, I'm very grateful for the talks you've been giving because it pointed out a blind spot in my practice, which is like repression of craving. So I've been reflecting and meditating on what you've said, and I just wanted to check if my view is correct in understanding craving. So craving is okay, craving will arise. Repression of craving is delusion. Seeing craving with wisdom is skillful and using skillful way to deal with it. So if it's then when you have wisdom, you can see if it's wholesome craving or unwholesome craving. So if it's wholesome craving, it's actually okay to use it as motivation to go along the path. But if it's unwholesome craving, then we do not want to encourage it, and we use skillful ways to deal with that. And the key is to observe the process so that you're not dragged away by the craving. I just wanted to check that that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at the craving, and what is this going to lead me to do, and is it skillful or unskillful? And because the Buddha, think of this: the young prince wanted to find the deathless so bad that he was going to leave family, leave home, go into the woods, try every teaching he could find, and if it didn't work, he was willing to starve himself. If that didn't work, he was saying, "I got to find some other way." He didn't give up. Now, what's that? What is that if not craving? And then he found the answer. Okay, there are three kinds of craving that are unwholesome. One is craving for sensuality, which is basically our fascination with thinking about what kind of sensual pleasures we want. Like you think about a pizza, and you can sit here while the Ajahn speaking, bow, 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 and think about what kind of pizza you want to have tonight. And you can have it with pepperoni or without pepperoni. You can go through the whole. That's sensuality. Then there's craving for becoming, which is basically you have a desire and you want to take on an identity that would actually achieve that desire. And here again, there's a kind of becoming that you do on the path, which is, get the mind into concentration and you become a meditator. Those are good becomings. Then there's craving for non-becoming, which is basically to be obliterated. So I just want to go blank out and I have nothing to do with anything in the world. And Buddha discovered, okay, that's not skillful. But if you're thinking about the non-becoming of unskillful thoughts, okay, that's actually a good kind of non-becoming craving. In other words, I've taken on an identity that I really don't think is skillful, I've got to change. And then you try to replace that with a better identity. That's the strategy of the path. So, but if you're taking on becomings that would not lead to the end of suffering, say, look, this is not helpful. And this is why I say that we have many selves inside us. We have a whole committee. And some of the committee members are wise, some of the committees are not wise. And instead of trying to obliterate all the committee members, you say, I'm going to use the wise ones to train the unwise ones. And that's how you get past them.
There's a little bit of fear of even following or like going along with what wholesome craving wants to do, but is the key like to go along with it without getting dragged into it, like being aware as I'm creating an identity of I'm a meditator or someone on the path, and not being attached to it that creates seeds for unwholesome.
Well, there's a certain amount of attachment to the path you've got to have. As Ajahn Fung said, you've got to be crazy about the meditation in order to do it well. I have a story about Ajahn Fung. He never told me this himself, but I heard it from someone who'd met with John Mahabua one time. And the only time I've seen anybody tell off Ajahn Mahabua and get away with it. Ajahn Mahabua came to see Ajahn Lee one time, and after the evening sit, he sought out Ajahn Fuang and started asking questions about the other monks in the monastery, who was a good meditator, who was a bad meditator. And Ajahn Fuang looked at him and said, "I came here to meditate." End of conversation. So, and you have to, this is one of the things I picked up from Ajahn Fuang, was he was very sharp at ending conversations. And I figure, well, where did he learn that talent? One, from Ajahn Lee, but also from his own meditation. You know, if you have a defilement coming up, you have to give it a quick karate chop. Otherwise, it just pulls your way into its labyrinthine patterns. And if you can see, okay, where's the weak point? You go straight for the weak point. So.
ทราบว่าหลวงพ่อจะประทับอยู่ที่วัดนี้หลายวันไหมเจ้าค่ะ
ใช่
หลายวันอยู่ใช่ไหม
อยู่ถึงวันพฤหัส
อยู่ถึงวันไหนเจ้า
วันพฤหัส
แล้วก็ออกเดินทาง
ออกเดินทางต่อไป
ไป
ไปนู่นไปซิดนีย์ไปแคนเบอร์ราไปบริสเบน
Ajahn, with precepts, I used to have a lot of guilt around making mistakes and like breaking precepts. Now that I'm practicing metta, there's less guilt, and I realize there's less like motivation
to break the precepts.
When I break precepts, like I don't quite know how to reflect. To be
Okay, well, just tell yourself. I mean, think about the Buddha's instruction to Rahula when he was young. He says, you try not to break the precepts, but then if you notice that you have, then you tell yourself, that was a mistake. And I don't want to repeat that mistake. If I have remorse about it, that's not going to make the mistake go away. And the best that can be asked of a human being is to recognize a mistake and to resolve not to repeat it. And then lots of goodwill all around.
Yeah, because energetically, guilt and fear seems to be a better, like, guard.
Well, it can wear you out. There comes a point where you say, somebody in my mind is trying to make me feel guilty. I don't feel guilty at all. And there's this sort of rebellious side of you as well. Whereas if you learn how to treat it with a little bit of humor, there's much less rebellion. There was a book one time, it was called The Wisdom of the Ego. And it was talking about how, the ego is not all bad. That there are skillful ego functions. And this was a psychology professor who wrote it. And he went down the list of skillful ego functions, and they all corresponded to Buddhist teachings. Like the first one is anticipation. When you see that there's some things I could do, I could make mistakes, so I'd better not make that mistake. That's heedfulness. Second one is altruism, realization that if my happiness depends on other people's suffering, it's not going to last, so for the sake of my happiness, I have to think about their happiness too. Compassion, goodwill. Sublimation, where you realize, okay, I've got to, first one, suppression, when I recognize I've got something unskillful in my mind, I can't act on it. And that's not repression. Repression is when you deny it was there. But suppression is when, like cats, cats make a mistake, I didn't do that. Suppression is when you know that it's there, but you just learn how to say no. That's restraint. Fourth one is sublimation. We realize, okay, I'm looking for happiness, I can't find it this way because that would be unskillful. I have to find a skillful outlet for my desires. And the Buddha doesn't have a term for that, but that's what the practice of concentration is about. The ability to find joy in generosity, joy in virtue. That would be sublimation. And then the fifth one is humor. Being able to laugh at your mistakes. And that's a really good attitude to have. And they say, oh gosh, and the Buddha doesn't talk about humor, but there are a lot of examples in the Pali Canon. And you say, where? I don't see any funny suttas. There are a couple of funny suttas, but the real humor is in the Vinaya. I don't know if you've ever read any Vinaya texts. I would recommend there's a book called the Buddhist Master Code.
Actually, I refer to your translation of that quite a lot.
Yeah. Okay, well, look at the origin stories. because a lot of them are very funny. And the whole point of that is that you see that the people who made the rules have a sense of humor, which makes it a lot easier to go along with what they're telling you, one. And you actually look at the behavior of the people who misbehaved in the rule, and it really is pretty stupid. Which means that when that kind of defilement comes up in you, you recognize, okay, that was pretty stupid. I don't want to go there. Give you a couple examples. One was there was a monk who had psychic powers, and he did battle with a fire-breathing serpent one time and was able to tame the serpent. Word of this gets out, and the lay people say, we really want to make merit with this monk. So they go to some other monks and they ask, what is it that monks don't usually get? Well, they ask the wrong monks. And they get a group of monks and say, we don't usually get hard liquor. So the next morning, everybody in the city has a little glass of hard liquor for this one monk. And so he takes it, house after house after house. And in spite of his psychic powers, he passes out at the gate to the city. The Buddha comes along with other monks. And the Buddha says, okay, pick him up, take him back to the monastery. So they do. And they lay him down on the ground, first with his head toward the Buddha. But he doesn't know where he is, and so he tosses and turns, finally has his feet toward the Buddha, which you don't do. And the Buddha says, before, didn't he show respect to us? Yes. Is he showing respect now? No. And before, didn't he do battle with the fire-breathing serpent? Yes. Could he do battle with a salamander now? No. That's why we have the rule against not drinking, against drinking. There was another one. There was this one monk, Julabandaka, and he had trouble memorizing the teachings. And so there was just one verse of the Buddha's teachings that he knew. And he was one of the monks that was assigned to teach the bhikkhunis. Every 2 weeks there would have to be a monk. It was kind of a rotating roster. And so one time it came to be his turn. The bhikkhunis find out it's Julabandaka's turn. They say, oh no, this is not going to be an effective Dharma talk, because he's just going to repeat that same thing over and over and over again. So they go, and after the formalities, he says, okay, here's today's teaching, and he starts repeating that verse again and again and again. And the bhikkhunis turn to one another and say, didn't we tell you? This is not going to be effective. Well, he overhears them. We had a few psychic powers up his sleeve, or up his robe. And so he levitates up in the air, splits himself into many versions of himself. Some of them emit fire, some of them emit smoke, some of them emit water. And they start saying different sayings of the Buddha, that one plus many others. And the bhikkhu said, wow, this is the most effective Dharma talk we've ever seen. Well, he gets carried away and continues displaying his psychic powers until after dark. And then he comes back down again. And he says, okay, you can go now. So they go back to the city. Well, they can't go into the city because the city gates are closed at dark. And so they have to sleep outside. And then the next morning, when the city gates open, they come filing into the city, and the people say, oh, here come the nuns after spending the night with the monks. Which is why monks are not allowed to teach bhikkhunis after dark. So if you can learn how to have an attitude of humor towards your mistakes, it makes it a lot easier to live with them.
Just on your previous question about becoming, is it the case that your mind is constantly looking to create a state of becoming, or is it that there are specific moments where you're wanting a becoming, and then that kind of carries you for a little while, and then there's another moment? Like, are there gaps in that process?
There can be gaps, but it's something that the mind does instinctively. Because you go to a desire, and what are your questions about the object you desire? One is, where is it? What world is it in? And then secondly, what do I have to do in order to get that? And so that way you have a world, and then you're taking on an identity in that world. Now this can happen on the micro level inside your mind. When you're thinking about a desire, then you see it you can envision it in a little world, and then you take on an identity within that. And then it's because of that that we get reborn on like a state of becoming like this, which lasts longer. But it's the same process. But it's something the mind does just instinctively. It's kind of like beavers. Do you have beavers in Australia? Oh, what a deprived country. Beavers are just cool. What? I know, but there's something about beavers. They've taken beavers that were raised in captivity. You know, their parents died when the little baby cubs, and they released them into the forest to see, well, will they do what beavers instinctively do, even though without having been taught by their parents? And sure enough, they do. They start cutting trees, and then they start making little dams and making little reservoirs. Kind of engineers reborn. But it's something it's built into them that's how they approach the world. They're looking for places to create beaver ponds. And they can build extremely elaborate dams. And they're really good for the environment. And a beaver is my totem, so I like them. But the point is that there's this habit that the mind has, and we create states of becoming again and again and again and again. And sometimes we have many going on at once. And sometimes they work together, sometimes they work at cross purposes. And sometimes some will kind of fade away for a while, and then you pick them up again. But it's our mind's instinctive way of approaching our experience.
And I guess just a couple of things that occurred when you said that. Would you say that if we have many becomings, each one of those is kind of what you might call a self? And then, let's say you have a goal and you're adjusting your strategies to reach that goal. Is each adjustment a becoming in itself?
Not really. You've got that one world, and now you're actually examining that world a little bit more to say, well, what's really going to work here? It's still centered on that original desire. It's when you change your desires, that's when you have a new becoming.
So, to the extent that you can maintain just one desire, you're maintaining just
a consistent becoming. And this is what the Buddha is asking you to do when you take on the Four Noble Truths. Desire at the end of suffering. Because one of the features of becoming is that, you know, there are certain things in the world outside that just become irrelevant to that particular becoming. Like, say you want an ice cream cone. Your political views have nothing to do with that ice cream cone, so that's not a relevant part of your identity at that point. Well, the same thing with Four Noble Truths. There are certain things questions that are irrelevant to the solution of putting an end to suffering. And the Buddha says, just put that stuff aside. Focus on this level of becoming. That's the one that he would recommend you stay consistently with.
Thank you.
I have a student who lives in Canada, and one of his hobbies is Australian mammals. And he came one time, he works with the Canadian health system, and he was working together with an Australian guy who works with the Australian health system, which they're very similar. He arrives in Sydney, the first place he goes is the zoo. And he starts asking very intelligent questions about the animals. So they take him back into the back part of the zoo, where all the wallabies and other strange Australian animals. So yes, I do appreciate that Australia has its own interesting animals. But still, beavers are cool. I'm going to have to go, so we have time for one more question.
I'd like to ask a question about the nourishment of mental fabrication. So in suttas, the Buddha described it as a man being pulled by two strong men towards an amber pit. Could you explain a bit about what that means, or what these two men symbolizes?
Okay, basically, the two men symbolize the fact that you are being overpowered by something. That you struggle as you might, you can't really struggle against it. You're getting pulled in that direction. So when you give these fabrications that kind of power over your mind, they take over, and they're going to drag you wherever they want. So the key to that, though, is the fact that you are actually giving them power. That's not the part of the image, but that's the solution.
Are the two men diametrically opposed to one another?
No, they're just stronger than you are. mean, it's like the same image, the bandits with the two-handled saw. It implies that there are at least two men. And so in a case like that, they're more than you. So in a position where you can't do anything at all you have left is your goodwill. Because even monks are allowed to hit back in self-defense if they see that it would serve a purpose. With no intention to kill, but you can strike somebody back if you want to escape. But if people have you overpowered, that's what the two men symbolize. It's just more power than you have.
Ajahn, maybe just to add on to that, right? How do I put this? How is that a nourishment?
Okay, well, it's something we feed on. Because the mind is always feeding. I mean, the word for clinging, upadana, can also mean to feed. And so that's where you're getting your nourishment. Now the nourishment may not be all that good. We have coyotes at the monastery who, when there are no avocados on the ground and there are no persimmons on the ground, they will eat plastic rope, they will eat all kinds of stuff just to get something in the stomach. And so this is the way we are. We try to feed off our environment. And if there's good nourishment, we'll take good nourishment. If there's bad nourishment, we'll take bad nourishment. Just anything to stuff. Again, it's an instinctive trait of the mind. Okay, to be continued.